Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome back to Monster Energy Supercross 3, the official video game, where today we're going to be playing the 2020 custom replica version of the 2020 Atlanta Supercross. Built this track in-game to replicate what we saw in real life over the weekend with the track editor, and I think I got it fairly close. Hopefully you guys agree. I don't know, maybe you don't. The one thing that obviously is like kind of the biggest hard thing to work around was the split section, which I just ended up using like split whoops for. And it still kind of works, but it's not the best. I don't know. I think the rest of the track's pretty straightforward. I think it's reasonably fun. I wasn't a big fan of the layout this week, to be fair. So the fact that I actually kind of like the layout in game is a step in the right direction, I guess. But anyway, you guys can always be the judge of that, or whether or not you like this track or don't. As you can see, the split section kind of was a bit of a pain to build. But we're going to talk about the 2020 Atlanta Supercross that just happened, kind of some thoughts and some highlights and all that good stuff as per usual. As always, playing on the PC, and you'll notice I'm using the Pay 2021 mod pack that he gives to the game, and I always try to include the link to that in the description below. So if you're on the PC, you can try out his mod packs. It has lots of cool different items and things like that mixed in, so you can always check that out if you want. Appreciate him putting in the work and doing that. But let's talk about this 2020 Atlanta Supercross, because it was really boring, I thought, until the main events. Like, really, the heat races and the LCQs and all that leading into it was kind of a snoozer, and I felt like the track was a contributing factor to that, because it wasn't that it was really one line, but it just seemed like tight and technical and hard enough to pass that guys were just like struggling to make anything really stick or anything happen. And because of that, it just made for boring heat races. Like, first of all, the transfer battles for the most part weren't that close in any of the real heat races. LCQs, I guess some of the LCQ stuff was a little bit better, but the heat races were kind of snoozers. And then second off, there just wasn't really close enough battling going on in the heat races to warrant good close action. So going into the main event, I was kind of like, man, is this going to be one of those weirdo nights where it's just like around you almost forget, because it was a pretty typical layout for a track. Everybody had already kind of thought there was some pretty straightforward ideologies about who was going to win the race for the night and stuff like that. And then the main events kicked off and things actually got kind of wild, so it was a good turnaround. Let's talk about the 450 class first and foremost, and talk about well, obviously we'll talk a lot about Eli Tomac in this video. First of all, I want to kind of premise this by saying I was almost positively or almost like 100% correct with my assumption last week, where I didn't really like Tomac's cutover move at Arlington, and 50% of people thought, yeah, I was right, and 50% of people thought I'm an idiot and I'm just ripping into Tomac. I couldn't care less one way or the other that it happened. Like, if it caused an injury, I feel like I'd be a little bit more negatively vocal about it. But at the end of the day, as I said, because Kenny and Jason were fine with the move last week, it doesn't bother me one bit. Like, I moved on, I'm happy with it. So it's funny to see how many people were saying I'm just constantly bashing Tomac because of that. And the reason I'm leading in with this is because, I mean, we have to at least talk a little bit about some of the things that Tomac did this week. And I'm just trying to tell you guys that I'm not saying things because I dislike Tomac or anything of that sort. I'm just saying what I'm seeing on the track. Like, if Ken Roczen had done some of the same things Eli Tomac has done in his career, I would be like, WTF, Ken Roczen, why are you crashing and finishing 12th all by yourself? Like, that has happened with Kenny on occasion, but it usually pertained to his injury. And sometimes we always have to like give Eli this unfair, I guess, if you want to call it, edge, because he has 31 career Supercross victories, but 0 titles yet. And so you almost have to weigh on him a little bit harder because of that. So yes, we, or me particularly, but we almost as a society tend to grade Tomac a little bit harder when things go awry, just because up until this point things have gotten weird every single year when Tomac has been in a spot to win the championship. And again, here we are. He's in a really good spot this week coming into Atlanta to open up a pretty sizable championship gap into a race that he's been really good at, Daytona, where he could probably win or potentially win, really extend this points lead, get it completely out of reach. And then he has like a weirdo first 4 minutes of the 450 main event. Now, everything that happened after that was great. Eli Tomac rode fabulous for 16 minutes to end the main event and got 4th. But everything before that, I was kind of like, what is happening? It was almost like bizarre, the switch that was going on back and forth. Because, like, first of all, he didn't get a good start. He got a great start in his heat race, whole shot his heat race, but then didn't get a good start in the main. And I'm not really sure what was attributed to that. The only thing that I'll say that was different was that in his heat race, he started next to the box, but in the main event, he started kind of like in the middle of the inside. And he had, choice because he won his heat, so he could have, elected to start, next to the box and try to use that same technique, which seems to work this year. Like, a lot of people starting next to the box get good starts. So Tomac kind of got a little out-jumped and swallowed up, which has been a thing that we talked about a little bit in the past. And that just attributed a bad start. Like, it happens, but this year Tomac's been a little bit better about turning a bad start into, like, probably battling for the lead by the halfway point of the main event. In the past, he's done one of two things. He's either gone way fast and gotten to the lead really quick from a bad start, or he's just kind of like fallen into a groove in the mid-pack range, which is fine either way. Like, if he's trying to salvage, that's good, and if he's trying to win balls out, that's good. But this time he was moving through the field, like, I felt like at a pretty steady rate this time. Like, it wasn't urgent or anything like that. I think he even actually got passed maybe by either Justin Hill or Vince Freezy, if I remember right, someone like that. And I was like looking at the situation going, well, Kenny's got the lead. I mean, I don't think Eli's too worried about Kenny down the stretch of the series. Maybe he is really just trying to preserve and have like a calm, collected night. And then he and Barcia got into it, and then everything flipped upside down after that. So what happened was, in this corner down here, Barcia went in, threw a block pass on Eli. Eli came back in the next corner, threw a block pass on Barcia. I don't know. I didn't think anything was wrong with either one of those situations that had happened. I thought Barcia coming in hot was fine, and I thought Eli coming in hot in this corner was pretty fine. Like, I didn't think either one was over the line, and we'll get to that in a second. But then the next lap around in those same exact sections, Barcia's still right behind Eli, and I've seen this whole thing talked about in a couple different lights. First of all, Blake Baggett got, basically lit up by Eli Tomac, and it was a really kind of a strange sequence of events because, like, Tomac comes in, and I didn't think he was even kind of close enough to think about a pass at the time. But when you look at it on replay, he was actually a lot closer than you think, almost. Like, it was a pretty, I wouldn't say it was like an outlandish attempt at a pass, but it was a deep one for sure, but one that I've seen people make, so I wouldn't say that it was like egregious or anything like that. But the difference was, it was so early in the race that I don't think any of those guys were expecting it. And I mean, they were starting to use this line, and everybody is kind of talked about this, and this is where I kind of have a fundamental disagreement with it. And I feel like there's the line between people who looked at it in a vacuum, I guess, versus people who are like Eli Tomac fans and think it was one way or the other. I've seen a lot of people defending Tomac, saying Baggett cut down really hard and that the only reason he crashed was because he cut down so hard. And I just don't agree with that. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sure that this is me bashing Eli again. I just think that Eli misjudged it and, lit up Blake Baggett and took himself down in the process. And I think part of the reason was because he had Barcia behind him, like breathing down his neck. And so I think in one sense it was like, defend the inside because I don't want Barcia to light me up in this corner. And in the other sense it was like, ooh, if I can make a pass here, I'll get away from Barcia, and then I won't have to deal with this chaos going on here, and I can just kind of ride my own race. So I think Tomac's like mindset going into the pass was fair enough. I just think it was a poorly executed pass attempt, unfortunately, and it took him down and it took Baggett down, and Eli has owned up to it. Like, he has taken the blame and said like he didn't want to come in that hard on Baggett, and it was his fault and all that. And that's exactly what I want out of these guys. Like, if you're gonna go in there and you're gonna race rough and do something that even if it's accidental, kind of like own up to your mistake. And I was really happy to see that Eli was about that. But it almost felt like we were falling into this vortex again of the Eli Tomac of yesteryear is back, because these weirdo moments that in the past took him out of championship contention, or at least hurt his championship hopes. That's like kind of some of the things that would happen. Like he would either crash in a weird way, or he would just fade or something like that. And this one seemed to be almost like just honestly speaking, I felt like it was like a brain fart moment where he just was in the wrong place at the wrong time and went for a pass that was a little bit too egregious early. But all that aside, what he did after that was tremendous. He picked his bike back up and got to work. And that is what champions are made of right there. Like in the past, that was something that kind of bit him, where he would get up and not be able to get as far through the field as he did. And he got a little lucky, I'll say. A little. I think worst case scenario, he ends up 6th there probably. But he got a little bit lucky with the Anderson crash and Wilson crash. Vince Freeze fell. I thought somebody else jumped off the track, and then Marty blew up late, and like all these different things. So his charge was tremendous. He was aided a little bit, but I mean, to go from that deep in the field after a crash and with everything that was going on, it was a really, really damn good salvage ride. But I think everyone is also forgetting that Cooper Webb started back there with him and rode to the front as well. So I think both of them deserve very high praise for the rides that they put in. Webb finishing 3rd a week on from flat landing on his back on the concrete from 10 feet up, and got a hematoma in his sacrum and pelvis, and was in a lot of pain all day from the sounds of it, and even couldn't make it to the post-race press conference because he had to go straight to the hospital. That stuff is another thing that champions, that's what makes champions right there, is those type of rides. So for both of them, I think that they really should be happy. Unfortunately for Eli's sake, he clearly was not happy, and I think that the reason for that was twofold. First of all, him coming in on Baggett like that, knowing who Baggett is and the rivalry he and Eli have had kind of through the years, in a sense, like Baggett and the "my father's not famous" quote from Thunder Valley in 2017 and things like that. I think this is going to come back around. Whether you guys think it's just or not, I don't think any of those guys care. Like, I think Blake feels he owes Eli one. Whether or not he should owe him one or not is beside the point. I think he just is going to say, I don't care. He lit me up for no good reason while we're battling for, I think they're 6th or 7th at the time, early in a main event when they're both in good position. So I'll do the same to him. Like, eye for an eye there, essentially. So I think Eli was kind of bummed because he knew that was probably going to be something to worry about in the future. But the second he got off the track, he had Barcia in his face, and Barcia was unhappy. And this is where I'm like kind of laughing a little bit, because with Barcia, it's like, hello, pot, kettle, like same thing. Like, you aggressive ride with people all the time, and then you can't really exactly whine when they do it back. What Barcia was saying was basically he thought his pass was straight up and clean with Eli, and he did it kind of fair and square, and he thought Eli's pass back was dirty. I don't know. Like, I wasn't on the track, I wasn't racing, I didn't feel it, but from the outsider's perspective, I didn't think either was that bad, as I said. But now you have Baggett, who probably owes Eli one. Whether you guys think he should or not, again, doesn't matter. I think Baggett actually feels he owes him one. And then Barcia is now super anti-Eli, because he was saying that he, go back to San Diego, the aggressive riding there, Barcia and Eli had words after, and Eli was apparently more upset at that time than Barcia, and Barcia laughed it off. But now they clearly have this kind of thing going on when they're near each other on the track. Eli doesn't want anything to do with it, and Barcia's like, hell yeah, I'm in the championship fight to some degree. He's 23 points down, but he's 3rd in points, and he wants to, try to take this thing to Salt Lake City if he can, or to, maybe even start clicking off wins and get right back into this. So he's trying to fight for everything it's worth, and I think that part of that strategy is getting either in Eli's head or at least rattling his cage enough to know that he's there. And so now he's, in a sense, poked the bear, and now Barsha's unhappy with Eli, Blake's unhappy with Eli. This is starting to brew into such a more interesting championship battle than I thought. Last week I said done and dusted, Eli's your champion, because I thought he's too good down the stretch and Kenny is not strong enough, and I didn't think anybody else would be alive for the championship. Now we have Cooper, who I think is also 23 points down, and Barsha, who is thinking he's in the championship, wanting to take Eli, out for dinner or something like that, whatever you want to say. And then Baggett probably wants one back, and all the while Ken Roczen just cruised to his third main event of the win of the year, got the whole shot, avoided all the chaos, has been pretty nice with everybody on the track this year. Like he's gone very much out of his way to not make enemies, I would say. And that's just kind of the championship motto that people always talk about, is like you don't want to make enemies when you're fighting somebody else for a championship. And not that I think Eli did any of this on purpose. I'm just saying now we have a situation where I think Eli might have to watch his back a little bit, like at Daytona, it probably won't matter. He'll probably whole shot he'll lead every lap and win. But in the future, I don't know, a couple rounds from now, if Blake starts in front of Eli and Eli catches him, what could happen? If Barsha, starts in the mid-pack again with Eli and they're battling with each other, what could happen? These are all things that we just almost have to kind of look for now that this incident has happened. Again, I'm just, like I said, I'm not trying to bag on Eli. I think that his entire race except the Baggett move was fine. And I think the Baggett move was just a mistake on his side, and I get it. Like, in the heat of the battle, that happens. I've defended other people for egregious moves like that in the past. And some people will think I'm an idiot for, almost defending him here, because it was a pretty egregious pass, but at the end of the day, I don't think he really meant to do it, so that's kind of where I'm getting at with it. But yeah, this is going to be really fun championship-wise moving forward. We have a lot of things to talk about, and this Atlanta main event definitely heated some things up, so exciting for sure. But before I just completely forget to talk about it, let's move on to 250s, because I've already just spent too much time on this. Actually, let me end 450s real quick. So Cooper Webb, Animal getting on the podium, but can we talk about Martin Davalos missing the podium by the skin of his teeth? This guy who has been just absolutely crapped on for years because he spent so many years in races in the 250 class and moves up this year, and he's been so fast at times and hits the ground too often, and then just barely missed the podium. He was 3 corners shy of his first career 450 podium. Man, it was almost like a heartbreak that you had to see Eli and Cooper go through there. Obviously for their sake, it was great rides to come back through, but Marty was riding so well, man. He almost had it. Oh man, bummer deal. And bummer deal for Dean Wilson too, who was a sitting duck for Jason Anderson's throw ride. Anderson was kind of all over the place all night, got stuck in the tunnel at one point. Dino got stuck behind him, lost a couple spots, and then Anderson stalled it in a corner when he ran into the back of Webb, I believe. And then Freeze landed on him and went down, and then Dean had nowhere to go and hit him and went down. Dean Wilson just unfortunately couldn't buy a break when he was in the same zip code as Anderson, and then Anderson apologized on Instagram saying this one wasn't the best and we were fried all night or something like that. So that's kind of funny banter, but yeah, definitely unfortunate for Dino. He was riding pretty well, and I think that his time is coming here pretty soon to really figure things out. But yeah, talk about the 250 class before I just again completely forget. Chase Sexton, really, really good race. He started right in that group, it was really, I think, what everybody wanted to see almost this week, where you have the Sexton-Hampshire rivalry brewing, where they hit each other and Hampshire owes him one and Sexton wasn't happy about it, but they moved on, and we were going to see pretty much this week what was going to happen. And then they started up front, basically 1 and 2, and then you can kind of see exactly how it played out. And Hampshire, to his credit, rode really well for a really long time, holding off Sexton. And then even when he got past, it wasn't like he got freight trained by McElrath behind him either. He stayed his ground and finished second. And by the end of it, it was actually catching Sexton a little bit. So I think Hampshire, which, by the way, nobody seems to remember this, but Hampshire, crashed and got hurt in December and really just barely got back on the bike before the start of the 250 East Championship. So he's got almost more room to grow than what we've seen because he's still just trying to get back to full strength and full health. So just a little tidbit there for Hampshire. Kind of impressive stuff that he's been able to put these rides in so fresh back on the bike and all that business as well. But yeah, the battle that we ended up seeing between them was really almost a moot point. Sexton came down the inside about halfway through the race, just put a nice, aggressive but clean block pass on him. Some people will say, oh, he wanted to take him out, but I think that it was, meant to just be exactly what it ended up being, which is like a slide-in pass, and blocked Hampshire from being able to triple into this section right here, and retaliate or get him back or whatever. And then Hampshire in the post race, like, they were asked, both of them straight up, like, is this something that's going to continue where you guys are now rivals or whatever? And Hampshire's like, no, I'm good, like, whatever. Like, yeah, we raced hard last week, we raced hard this week. I think everybody's fine with what's been happening now, and we'll move on. And Sexton's like, yeah, it's behind us. So interesting that this takeout war started to happen and ended quicker than you think. And I'd be curious to see if Hampshire gets into this championship discussion moving down the stretch and starts actually giving Sexton a little bit more of the business if tempers flare again. But right now it seems like it's chilled down a little bit, and Sexton looks like he is, in my opinion, the best he's ever looked on the bike. Yes, he won the championship last year, but we all know about Faulkner going out, and then Sexton actually only won one main event last year and just, put in a solid ride in Vegas to win the championship. I think he looks better than ever, and I think that's a really positive sign that he's hitting his stride as he is headed towards the 450 class. So because of the way the rules work, he has to go up next year. He can't defend. Like, he defends once and then he's out, and he's been in the class for 3 years, so technically the point out rules exist as well. But he's already signed, sealed, and delivered. He's going Honda 450 outdoors alongside Roczen, and then he'll be Roczen's teammate in 2021 on a 450. And dude, the kid looks good. Like, he looks really good. Obviously he's a little bit taller, so I think it's almost, you have to start talking about, does a 450 maybe even suit him better because of that size and stature? And he's such a smooth rider. Like, for a 250 guy, he doesn't really strike me as someone that is ever riding too hard. He's just putting in good, solid, consistent laps, and they're fast as can be, but they just don't look like he's laboring that much. And I even made a mention of it last week where it's like, even when he makes mistakes, they look good. Like, he'll get sideways in the whoops, he'll case a jump, he'll do whatever, but he looks like he knows exactly what his bike is going to do every time one of those things happens, and he like almost reacts to it perfectly. Here's a funny but good example that I feel like I can explain about that is, like, you guys remember when you play MX versus ATV Reflex and you played it enough that you knew when you were going to case a jump or when you were going to get sideways which direction the reflex stick was going to have you go. So, like, you'd hit it almost the second it would appear on screen, and you'd almost barely even see it because you hit the reflex stick immediately. I'm sure some people who play reflex a lot still know what I'm talking about, but if you played it back then, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about too. That's what it looks like when you're watching Sexton. Like, oh, he's out of shape, and oh no, he's not out of shape, and the whoops, he's fine. Like, he's already corrected it, and he's good and on his way. Oh, he's cased the jump. No, he's fine. He's good. Just moving on. That's what I mean. Like, he's really, really good at reacting to situations that could go awry very quickly. So that's a good tool to have in his back pocket, because he's not erratic, for one, and when he does get erratic, he's good at saving it, which on a 450 is the downfall of 250 riders. Like, 250 guys that move up to a 450, when they get erratic, they think, when in doubt, throttle out, so they pin it. And in Sexton's case, he's not that exact way. Like, he's more finesse and actually good at saving stuff, which is what you need to do on a 450, because when in doubt, throttle out doesn't work on a 450 when you're in third gear and you absolutely send it off the side of the track because you're getting sketchy in the whoops or something like that, So anyway, just some thoughts on Sexton there. And then McElrath kind of hinted that he had bike setup issues, more specifically, that he was kind of fighting all day. He said that in the press conference. And it to me, it kind of looked like you could almost see that he wasn't as smooth and fluid in his corners. The whoops are small, so you didn't really get an idea with that. But he was, like, more or less fighting the bike a lot when you could see some of the shots that they had of him behind them. And to still, end up third, good ride and good points. So I don't think that he's too bummed about it, because he's still, like, right in the mix of the championship. He's only 5 down or so. And then Daytona's coming up, which is always just a crapshoot. Like, somebody that we're not even talking about right now could win Daytona and throw a wrench in everything and make things even more interesting. The one person I'm the most bummed for this week, I would say, is Jeremy Martin. Jeremy Martin was the unfortunate man of the week, I would say, because RJ Hampshire got sketchy, landed on some tough blocks, knocked them on the track, and then Martin hit them and lost a bunch of time. And by the time he got remounted, was basically a lap down and had to come into the mechanics area to get his fender removed. And I think he ended up 20th or 19th or so. And that's just such a huge blow this early in the series to someone who I think could have been a threat down the stretch. Talked about it before, where he's really good at, building up to race-winning pace and then winning a lot of races in a row, which has happened in the past. And it seemed like that was something that could be coming. Like, he was just third, fourth, on his way to maybe another fourth, or even maybe getting McElrath for a podium there, and then, just gets caught out by the tough blocks, basically, and goes down. And now he's pretty far down in the points, and that sucks, just like I said, because he could have been a guy that down the stretch made this thing a little bit more interesting. So yeah, bummer for J Mart. Anyway, that's just some thoughts and opinions from Atlanta. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. I'll await the Eli Flame. I'm sure it's coming because I didn't defend him vehemently. I'll say, he was mostly at fault for the Baggett situation. I don't necessarily agree with the Baggett cut down so hard that Eli hit him because Baggett cut down so hard. I don't agree with that. Anyway, that's just my thoughts and opinions from Atlanta. Hope you guys enjoyed them, as always, and I'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.